career practice webinar on successful use of ICT and social media in career advisory services. I'm Raymond, your moderator for today. Together with me are Ruby and Fiza. We are from the Research and Innovation Division of Institute for Adult Learning. I shall call it IAL. IAL is an autonomous institute of Singapore University of Social Sciences. IAL is at the forefront of building capabilities and continuing professional development for an effective, innovative, and responsive training and adult education sector. You can find more information about us in ial.edu.sg. Now, before we start, some administrative details. This entire webinar will take about 90 minutes. The speaker will share for about 50 minutes, followed by about 15 minutes of sharing by the panelists. During the webinar, the chat function will be disabled. However, you can post your questions using the Q&A option, and we will try our best to answer them. If we are unable to answer your questions, be assured that we will address them after the webinar. This webinar will be recorded and made available on IAL website. The presentation slides will also be sent to you via email. IAL Excellence in Career Practice webinar series aimed to provide career advisory practitioners like all of you and others interested in this field with resources that can help develop and reinforce best practices in career services delivery. I am very proud to introduce our speaker today, Professor James Sampson. He is an IAL visiting fellow and a professor emeritus in the Department of Educational Psychology. And Learning System, I'm sorry for that, Florida State University. He is Senior Research Associate at the Center for the Study of Technology in Counseling and Career Development, and formerly Associate Dean for Faculty Development, College of Education at Florida State University. Professor Sampson is a distinguished professor and a licensed psychologist with over 40 years experience as a career counselor and a consultant in career services delivery and computer-assisted career guidance. He has a PhD in counselor education from the University of Florida, and altogether with his colleagues, pioneered the cognitive information processing theory of career problem solving and decision making. Joining us today on our panel of experts, we have Mr. Jeremiah Wong, who is a Senior Manager from Career Practitioners Division from Workforce Singapore. Jeremiah oversees the capability building and career development of career practitioners, and he constantly improves himself with modern theories and practices to help shape the discourse and design of career services. And also joining us today is Ms. Yogeswari, a senior coach with Employment and Employability Institute. Yogis has over 10 years experience in helping to fulfill a client's career aspiration and training needs. As a coach, she has engaged clients from all walks of life and partnered with them on their job search journey. As a certified career practitioner, she has not only managed job and training needs, but also provided emotional support. Last but not least, Ms. Christine Low, Senior Assistant Director in Nanyang Technological University, NTU, and she leads the Employer Relations team in NTU's Career Attachment Office. bridging students and employers to create good employment outcomes. Christine has been a career practitioner for more than 10 years, rendering assistance to a wider spectrum of clients, ranging from rank and file workers to mid-career professionals, managers, executives, and technicians. She is particularly interested in helping her clients identify their strengths, uncovering possibilities, and overcoming challenges. Now, without further ado, let us welcome Professor James Sampson. Professor, over to you right now.
Good morning. I'd like to thank the Institute for Adult Learning for making this webinar possible, and to the panelists for providing context and application of the topics that we're going to be discussing this morning, and to Ruby Toe for facilitating the creation and delivery of this webinar. So the title of this webinar today is Successful Use of ICT and Social Media in Career Advisory Services. By ICT, what I'm meaning is computers connected with the internet that facilitate communication so that you can transfer information, but you can also communicate and talk between individuals. So that's what I mean by ICT. I want to acknowledge that several colleagues from around the world helped to create this presentation. Two of my colleagues from Finland, two from Florida State University, and another from University of Illinois. So it was a group effort in creating these concepts that I'll be sharing with you today. So the purpose of this webinar is to really look at the role of career development practitioners in delivering career interventions that use information and communication technology. Examples of this would be the use of assessments or information, job matching systems, or using the technology to actually provide counseling services. So we're going to see how has that role evolved over time, and where are we today in terms of this role. But then we're going to pay particular attention to looking at social media and how the role of practitioners might evolve as a result of using social media in career interventions. So this is how I'm going to organize my talk today. We're first going to look at the benefits of ICT use in career interventions, but then look at some of the limitations. And then using those 2 points, we're going to develop a profile of the role of practitioners in making good use of ICT. We're then going to take a closer look at social media and how the role of the practitioner might evolve even further as a result of social media. We'll briefly look at some implications for theory, research, training, and policy, and then we'll have a really good panel discussion where we can contextualize some of the ideas that we've been talking about in relationship to Singapore, and provide an opportunity for questions and answers. As I begin, I want to make sure that I'm clear about some terminology. In this presentation, I'm using practitioner for all professionals who deliver career interventions, no matter what their job title might be. Persons receiving a career intervention with practitioner support, they're being helped by a practitioner, or I'm referring to them as clients. And persons receiving a self-help intervention without practitioner assistance are referred to as individuals. So you can tell whether a counselor is involved or not by whether or not I'm saying they're a client or they're an individual. So let's take a look at what are the benefits really of using ICT. Why should we be using ICT in career interventions? Its most important advantage is the degree to it that it has increased access to career interventions. Career interventions are no longer restricted to physical facilities, a particular building or place. Now we can access these career interventions from anywhere in Singapore, as long as you have a good internet connection. This is really a necessity for some individuals. There are some remote areas of Singapore where it's a little difficult for transportation, and takes a little while to get into to a career service to get help. We don't want that to be a barrier for someone seeking assistance. But it's a more important barrier for a person with a disability who has mobility problems. Then ICT becomes a real necessity for a person to be able to really access these services. For other individuals, it's simply a convenience because they want to get resources or services at their home or outside of normal working hours. We've been surprised about this convenience factor having been a real driver for getting people to come in and get assistance because it was really easy to do. Specifically, in terms of the resources that are available, there is really now increased access to career assessment of values, interests, skills, and so forth. And those are both traditional assessments we've used for years, as well as new assessments that have been developed recently on the internet. Also, increased access to information. Search engines are becoming much more powerful all the time, and we can now identify information quickly and easily using some of these search engines on the internet. We're also seeing a lot more video-based information, especially as computer power and internet bandwidth improves. People can now get information about occupations or educational opportunities, training opportunities, employment opportunities by looking at videos, which provide a more complete picture of a particular occupation, for example, than a print document or just photographs might. And lastly, social media-based information is now been added to all of the traditional information that's been developed by government and publishers and so forth. Distance counseling has become really a very important part of these career interventions. We have been really surprised during this COVID-19 pandemic how quickly practitioners have switched to distance intervention delivered by email, chat, telephone, or video conferencing. The anonymity that certain types of this access provides has been especially important for reluctant clients. People that coming into a center is difficult for them to do, and they're anxious about that. And so in some of the initial contacts with clients can be anonymous, which then gets them started in a service delivery process, which is very, very important for those who have been somewhat reluctant in the past. It's especially true when we're using asynchronous chat and email, because the perceived safety and disinhibition among some clients further encourages them to seek assistance when they wouldn't in the past. Also, there are some specific advantages to texting and emailing to get assistance, because the slower pace allows people to really think and reflect about what they're about to say and what they have heard from someone else by reading the text or the email. So that period of reflection sometimes helps people to give more thoughtful answers. The other big advantage is that clients can get access to practitioners with very specialized competencies. For example, if there was a layoff and a need to rehire large numbers of people, specialists in that particular area are available because of the using the internet to be able to connect with them anywhere in Singapore. Social media has added some distinct advantages, some distinct benefits, and with this asynchronous and synchronous exchange of text and video. So not only can people easily access practitioners, but they can also access friends and family, significant others in their life that are important to them in making this decision, as well as other individuals who are in similar circumstances to the individual who's accessing social media. The best example I can think of this is our traditional use of job clubs, where groups of people come together to support each other in a job search. That can now be done virtually with social media. It also allows individuals and groups through their exchange of information to develop common understanding about what's happening in a particular industry. We're seeing a rapid rate of change in some industries and some jobs as a result. And these groups can develop a common understanding of what's happening and where the opportunities might be for the future. It's a very distinctive shift in guidance from being supplier-driven to being a more user-driven experience. At one time, most of the guidance provision information was really controlled by the practitioner. Now, the actual client has an ability to create and provide information to other individuals, which is really shifting that locus of control. It's also resulted in improved efficiency in career resources and services. It's easier and less expensive to disseminate information, and it has significantly improved the accessibility and anonymity, especially for young people who seem to be heavy users of social media. There's also some improvements in client and staff safety with regard to coronavirus. And the fact that there's reduced face-to-face interaction lowers the risk of coronavirus transmission, which makes it more safe for people to receive services, and they're hopefully more likely to engage and use services. The specialization feature is important as well. Staff members can specialize in distance or face-to-face services based on their preference and expertise. So we get the best quality services by the best trained practitioners available. There's some cost effectiveness in terms of reducing the cost of adding office space to accommodate increased client demand for services. Because as we have these rapid changes in our economy, we're seeing increasing demand for services. Well, the use of the internet, the use of distance service provision really allows us to accommodate those increased demands without increasing significantly our costs. It also helps in terms of scheduling for staff supervision, because we can do staff supervision just as well over the internet as we can distance counseling, which creates a definite flexibility in how we do supervision. Unfortunately, not all of the experience with ICT and career interventions has been positive. There has been some problems as a result of this, and one of the significant problems is reduced assessment quality. And the problem with this is that it has become so inexpensive to create assessments and to put them on the internet that where a publisher might require a lot of research before they would invest in publishing a test, now since it's so cheap to be able to put something on the internet, we end up with some poor quality assessments that haven't been appropriately validated, We don't have enough evidence that they really measure what they say they measure. And the problems that we've had with assessment validity are even worse with test interpretation and validity. As we develop interpretations for tests, many tests have some evidence of validity, but almost no evidence of test interpretation validity. It's one thing for the test to be good, but also, is the interpretation any good? And many of the websites that promote these assessments really do not offer good evidence for the validity of the test or the interpretation. The next problem that we've really run into is reduced information quality. One of the statements that I made a long time ago at the beginning of the internet era was that what the internet has done is it has provided better access to poorer quality information. So better access to information that's not as good. So yes, it's easier to obtain, but it has questionable quality. The validity problems are due to either poor research for the information or bias in the nature of the information, where someone has a particular point of view that they want to express, they have a particular goal, and they shape the information presentation to get you to behave in a particular way or believe something. Also, some of the data presentation is so poor that it makes the information difficult to use. Text information that's long pages of data tables about supply and demand are difficult for clients and individuals to use. And then we have some unique problems associated with the validity of social media-based career information. Remember, I said before that that now the individual on social media can create their own information. So they now have a voice in creating career information. Well, if some of the information created by professionals is difficult to use, then that is even potentially more of a problem when the information is created on social media. And there's a variety of specific problems that can compromise the validity of social media-based career information. Intentional bias, where someone they have a particular, they want you to apply for a particular type of job, or they're selling a particular type of training, and so they're shaping the information to get you to buy the training or to apply for a particular job. Or it could be unintentional bias. It could be some of the stereotypes and problems that all of us have, and that comes through in what I'm saying in social media. It could be a restricted range of experience. For example, someone is saying that this particular job, I've never really had a chance as a social worker to really work with people because I was in an office cubicle and I was just filling out forms all day. So social workers really don't get a chance to work with people, when in fact that's really not true. It was a restricted range of experience. This was this one individual's issue, but it's not representative of social work as a whole. Out-of-date information is just as bad in social media as it is in regular internet websites that have out-of-date information. Popularity bias is a unique problem associated with social media. And that is that one of the ways that social media works is that it looks and analyzes the number of times something has been accessed as a measure of how easy it is to find that bit of information. So something that has been retweeted or reposted many times comes up higher in search lists than something that is not as often posted or tweeted. So this popularity bias means that ideas, just because many people believe them, are not necessarily true. It just means they're popular. So in this way, misinformation can be quickly spread. As you know, there are lots of questions being asked in the United States today about what's truth and what's right and what's wrong. Similarity bias has to do with anything where a picture or a video of the person who's presenting the social media based information, if you look at that picture, if it's a man or a woman or a person with a particular nationality or ethnic background, that the person believes that if you look like me, then your information must be correct, when in fact it may not be. Context deficiency just means that the context is not well understood by the person who's creating the information. So they may understand their own local context, but they don't understand the context of other places where people may be living and receiving this information. Another issue that I've been concerned about for a long time is that there are times when people are getting resources and they're not getting the support they need to use those resources. Some clients and individuals need practitioner assistance to really benefit from using those assessments and information. Some need help in locating and using the relevant information. In other words, where do you find the information the person needs? And then how do you use it once you've found it? Some people need help in understanding how to use the ICT itself. It is, while it's been one stereotype is that older adults have more problems using ICT than young people. In some cases, young people have difficulty using ICT, and older adults are using it quite well. So some individuals still have difficulty using the technology. And then they have difficulty in relating that particular ICT application to their specific needs. And so it's, again, how do I use the information that I've located? This is especially a problem for individuals with low readiness for decision making, because these individuals tend to have more anxiety, more depression, more doubt about their ability to make a decision, more hesitant, and they tend to be more likely overwhelmed with information. So they need information in smaller bits and where it's given to them at a slower pace. So less information volume at a slower pace. And so some individuals have difficulty in making good use of this information when they have low readiness for decision making. We know the research that we've done shows that practitioner intervention really contributes to ICT effectiveness. So having a practitioner is really helpful. Not for everyone. Not everyone needs a practitioner to help them use technology. It depends a lot on their readiness for decision making. So some people can use this technology very well on a self-help basis, but some people can't. And they really need support for this technology to be really effective. We have good practitioner intervention models. They all have pretty much a common 3-element series of steps that you go through, which essentially is preparing people to use the ICT-based application, monitoring how well they're using it, and then talking with them about what they learned as a result of using the ICT-based intervention. So a definite need for practitioners, in some cases much stronger than others, and problems occur when the practitioner is needed and they're not available. There are some unique problems with distance counseling. And some clients are not providing proper informed consent before counseling. Practitioners are not showing evidence that they're complying with established professional standards, like being clear about what their credentials are, for example. You really need to have adequate writing and computer skills to be able to use distance counseling. and some clients don't have these. And practitioners may not be aware of what's happening in the local area where the client lives. They're not aware of local conditions, events, cultural issues that may be impacting these clients. So some problems with distance counseling. If we look at social media in particular, we end up with digital exclusion due to access problems. Some people don't have technology, whether that's smartphones or computers with the kind of capacity they need to be able to make good use of social media. There are unique confidentiality, security, and privacy problems with social media, especially when you're in a large chat room. How do you really ensure that what a person is saying in a group context to a practitioner will remain confidential? I mentioned the validity of social media-based career information before, the different types of bias, for example, the popularity bias. At the current time, we don't have enough practitioners who are skilled in the use of social media and distance counseling, for that matter, for this to really be as successful as it has the potential to be. We need more training for practitioners in this area. Problems in terms of reduced confidentiality and security in relation to case notes and assessment data. There are particular problems with inconsistent use of data encryption to promote security of client data. Just using Skype or Zoom, those are not secure platforms. They're not encrypted to be able to provide the kind of security that is that's really needed. The equality of access issue is something, again, that I've been concerned about for quite a while, and it's that limited financial resources can be a barrier to accessing information and communication technology. So we end up with people that can't really access computers because they don't have enough money to be able to afford the type of internet connection that allows them to do social media with video, or they really can't afford a smartphone with enough capacity. When we get beyond the financial resources, we end up with the digital divide. It's not just the fact that there's not enough money that a person has, but they don't have, for a variety of reasons of limitations in their education, and as a result of poverty, they don't have the digital literacy to know how to access and use the technology that they have. And I really believe this is a social justice issue. I think we need to work to make sure that everyone in our society has access to these resources, and they're not limited by poverty or knowledge. I've mentioned before some problems with practitioner competencies, people just not having enough training. And there's a particular issue with distance counseling and the kind of credentials that people have. They don't have an adequate credential for doing that. Another problem I've been concerned about for a long time is implementation problems. And that is within the organization that tries to implement ICT and delivering career interventions. There's not enough planning on how they're going to use it. Practitioners didn't get involved in decision making and are therefore resistant. There's a unique problem with how to integrate new technology within old services. In other words, how does the new fit with the old? And sometimes it's not a good fit. Not enough staff training. Staff members, practitioners don't like to look incompetent in front of their clients, and they get embarrassed. And that makes them feel anxious and sometimes resistant. That problem could have been solved by involving them in the planning process and participating in decision making and providing them with enough staff training. And then we don't have enough evaluation, so we don't really know how well this technology is working. And I've mentioned about staff anxiety and resistance and some of the causes for that. So suffice to say that there are lots of benefits and limitations to the use of ICT in the delivery of career interventions. So what I've done is I've created the next 4 slides that I call key aspects of the practitioner role in using ICT in career interventions. So I've created these 4 slides as a checklist. So we've combined the benefits and limitations and created these statements. So what I'd like you to do when you receive this PowerPoint presentation as an email, what I'd like you to do is to take these 4 pages, print them off, and think about your own work and your own use of ICT in career interventions. You might do this as a staff in your career service, where you'll look at this and discuss this. A couple of examples of these roles is recommend only valid assessments and information. Have a basis for determining which clients and individuals are likely to need support. Who needs support, who doesn't? What kind of counseling model do you have to help people? How do you make clients aware of the benefits and limitations of distance counseling as well as social media? So I'd like you to run through these, run through this checklist, and then evaluate yourself and have colleagues discuss this and how you might be able to improve this situation. So I want to move on now to social media. Social media is really the most recent of the innovations that we've seen in ICT in the delivery of career interventions. And my colleagues from Finland and I did some research, and we really asked practitioners what they saw as their role in terms of using ICT, especially social media and ICT. And it was a continuum, starting with using social media just to provide expert information. So it was just another information source. It's still kind of the least innovative use of social media. Then the next level up from that is using it to provide information and using social media as a resource for creating dialogue, a one-on-one dialogue with a client. So in essence, you're doing distance counseling either through text or through video or audio, and using the social media tool to be able to accomplish that. But then we expand beyond one client onto a group of clients, similar to group counseling, where I'm using social media to facilitate interaction amongst groups of individuals. I mentioned before a layoff situation where a group of people were laid off together. And then this is where I could use social media with that particular group to focus on how they're going to make a transition into new employment. The most innovative of the uses of social media have been really in actively engaging communities of individuals around a particular career issue. And this is where the practitioners somewhat steps to the side a bit and encourages the voice of others in providing information and opinion and ideas about how to deal with the rapid change in employment right now as a result of changes in technology or changes in the economy or changes as a result of COVID-19, for example. And this is a broader use, and we call this co-careering, which we say involves a shared experience and meaningful co-construction of career issues amongst community members using social media. So if practitioners are going to use social media effectively, this will require active participation in social media by getting the skills required, establishing a visible and trusted social media presence. you have to really be active on social media. Your profile has to rise up enough that people will contact you and connect with you and ask questions, which is really important for referring them to your services that your organization may offer. And being able to use social media, social media presence in actually then delivering career interventions, helping people with job change, helping people with deciding on going back for additional training and so forth. And last, monitoring individuals' use of social media. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The question is, practitioners are already busy, already have a lot of tasks. So how are we going to add these social media role onto what practitioners are already doing, already busy with numerous tasks? Well, I have a series of steps here for how to establish this online presence in social media. So first is to establish these foundational skills for social media participation. And the best way of doing that is really by contributing to the design and implementation of the social media strategy for their own organization. That's a really good first step in how to become competent with social media, and having a presence in your own social media sites that your organization is connected with. Then practitioners going on beyond their organization to social media tools that they have themselves, and making sure that they have a presence on social media as an individual separate from their organization. The third role is to monitor social media posts within an organization. So as you're looking at a LinkedIn page or a Facebook page for your organization, that you respond to requests for information or services. When people ask questions, you respond. And then also going beyond answering a question to recommending resources and services that fit individual characteristics and needs, and then following up later to make sure the person is making progress. Taking advantage of any opportunities for co-careering among the community members that their particular organization serves. The next one is more difficult. Participating in external social media sites where the clients and individuals they serve are likely to frequent. In other words, by observing what's the conversation about career on other social media sites other than the one for your own organization, you can answer questions or requests, you can recommend resources and services, and most important, market your own organization as a source of assistance for that. I would recommend starting with those first 3 points and then moving to that fourth point, but really making sure that you're able to monitor what's happening in your own organization first. It's really important in this monitoring process that we're really monitoring individual statements that indicate any possible harm to themselves or others. This is a key fundamental part of our ethical codes, that if we have a client that is indicating that there's a possibility they may harm themselves or someone else, then we need to intervene in appropriate ways. But also anyone who indicates any potential abuse of vulnerable persons. For us in the United States, that would be someone who would be very young or very old, are protected in our society. And as a vulnerable person, we should act if we believe that they're potentially being abused. But another issue, I think, is people that make statements indicating stereotypes or suggesting discrimination that limit persons' opportunities. There are certain occupations, for example, that a man should do, and there are certain occupations should be limited to women. That's bad for both men and women, and we need to take a stand and say that stereotyping and discrimination in employment, in career decision making, is inappropriate, and we need to stand up and make a statement to that effect. Another way of doing the social media monitoring, there are certain data analytics available that on your social media site will allow you to see what's the reach, impact, and utilization of their social media presence. The social media tools themselves can give you some of these data analytics. Obviously, doing evaluation to enhance their social media strategy within the organization, what seems to be working, what seems not to be working, and making sure that practitioners have supervision from someone who is experienced in social media themselves to help them improve their social media practice. So this social media content monitoring, this is an important part, I believe, to making social media a successful resource in the delivery of career interventions. But in the barrier, I think, is to implementing that is the sheer volume of social media posts can be overwhelming. So how do we know on a social media site for a career service, for example, which posts should be responded to? They deserve prompt attention, and which posts can be responded to later or maybe even not at all. Practitioners typically do not have enough time to read all of the posts, let alone respond to the ones that really need attention. Some of the social media sites have the capacity to monitor posts. More work needs to really be done on that. What we really lack are algorithms based on theory, empirical data, and expert professional judgment that can prioritize which posts need to be attended to and which posts we can respond to later or not at all. The most interesting thing that's happened in the United States has been a crisis text line. Typically in the United States, helplines have always been telephone based. So someone calls and they'll get a crisis hotline worker who talks to them about the particular problem or crisis that they're experiencing at the moment. But young people have shown such a disinterest in using the telephone and such a strong interest in texting that they prefer texting to actual, which is a asynchronous mode of communication, with a synchronous mode like speaking on a telephone. So this crisis text line has been enormously popular. And what happens with the text line is that it has a artificial intelligence basis for prioritizing responses based on the individual's danger to themselves or others. So an algorithm prioritizes the texts, and it will suggest respond to these texts first and respond to these other texts later or not at all. So I think it is possible to create some of these algorithms for looking at these social media posts. We don't have this right now, but I think we certainly can create these type of applications because we have good theory on readiness for career decision making and mental health, who's likely to be more of a danger to themselves and others. We have empirical data on the characteristics of individuals who are most likely to be at risk of career disengagement or harm to self or others. And we can add the professional judgment on if you have this kind of interaction on social media, this needs to be attended to carefully. So these social media sites should be able to help clients prioritize their time to serve clients and individuals with the greatest need. That's how I think we avoid overwhelming practitioners with extra work when they're already busy, by letting the technology itself help them to prioritize what they need to pay attention to. And I've already mentioned about artificial intelligence as being a tool here. So what implications does this have for theory and research? I think we need research to take a particular look at what are the benefits and limitations of distance career service delivery, and how are these similar and different from face-to-face career service delivery. I've always maintained that working at a distance and face-to-face are different interventions. Working in a asynchronous mode is different than working in a synchronous mode. It's not, the question is not, are they the same? The question is, we know they're not the same, but do they really help us to create effective career interventions? Are they good? Are they effective? Are they useful? And that's the question I think that we need to be looking at in terms of evaluation as we look at our different modes of interacting with our clients. It's important to know how synchronous and asynchronous service delivery modalities interact with client characteristics and problems. Are there some types of clients that are particularly poorly suited for an asynchronous communication, and they really need that immediacy of the interaction with the practitioner? It's important to know how readiness for career decision-making influences outcomes in these distance career advisory services. We have some pretty good idea that the outcomes will be poor for individuals with low readiness unless they have enough practitioner support. We need additional research to really be able to confirm the limits of who can use what type of technology for what reason to get the most benefit. It's important to understand how clients and practitioners both are using social media in these career advisory services. What's the current use of these systems? And what impact does social media content monitoring have on clients and career advisory services? Do people respond negatively to having someone comment on their posting or ask them a question? What is going to be the reaction of clients and individuals to this? Obviously, there are particular implications for training in social media, in particular, proficiency to locate, evaluate, and use online content. Being a really good writer, a concise writer for social media posts. Capacity to generate and maintain constructive online discussions, whether synchronous or asynchronous. Having that visible and trusted online presence, and fostering into this collaboration needed for co-careering among peer group members with a career concern. Some final questions to pose to you. With ICT and social media, career practitioners need to think about these points, I think, to remain relevant. Given that social media and text-based distance communication is so popular amongst young people, how does our guidance policy need to evolve to meet the unique needs of young people when they have a particular preference for the kind of technology that they want to use? What impact will distance counseling and social media have on adults, some of whom are less familiar with this technology? And how do we allocate time for practitioners between distance and face-to-face interventions? Do we create a situation where practitioners choose that they prefer distance or they prefer face-to-face? Or do we have a circumstance where everyone in the office has a certain amount of distance and face-to-face intervention time? I think these are questions that we really need to think of. These are references for the content of this presentation. You can see the links there, and you can access those. This last slide shows our research center, the Center for the Study of Technology and Counseling and Career Development, which we call the Tech Center, which you can get additional information about designing career interventions, about using ICT in the delivery of career interventions. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to some interesting discussion about the use of ICT in career interventions.
Thank you, Professor Sampson, for your sharing on the successful use of ICT and social media in career advisory services. I now invite Jeremiah, Yogis, and Christine, the panel of experts, the panelists, to share their experiences in the use of ICT and social media in their work as career practitioners. I shall now pass the time over to you, Jeremiah. Panels of experts, please unmute yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Raymond. Thank you, Professor Sampson. I think that was a excellent sharing. It's obviously it's not my first time hearing this. We went through a rehearsal, and I can't help but reflect on my own practice as well. I think one of the key pertinent point that, as I reflect on myself as a career practitioner, is the use of ICT and so especially professional social media. And I think in the case of Point here, we're talking about LinkedIn. As a practitioner, a lot of time that my clients actually ask me, for example, just last week, a client of mine actually asked me, "Hey, Jeremiah, as a career coach, what are your perspective of how often should I participate on LinkedIn conversation, posting posts, commenting on people's viewpoints? How much do I comment to ensure that I have some level of parity, some involvement, and to make sure my perspective or my online presence, as Professor Sampson you talk about, is good enough?" So and the client goes on to share with me that there is a peer pressure among him and his colleagues and his own friends, that there is a need to constantly be online, constantly be commenting and involved in the conversation in the sphere of social media. So that is something that is something that I ponder a lot of time between posting something, commenting, and of course, and as a practitioner of LinkedIn myself, the challenge also posed to the job seekers is how does one create and conceptualize their LinkedIn profile from scratch. So that's something that if I may just get this conversation going. How about the rest?
Okay. Thank you, Professor Sampson, for the very insightful presentation. Good morning, everyone. My name is Yogeshwari, and I'm from Employment and Employability Institute. Before I go into my sharing, right, I just want to make reference to a point that Jeremiah shared earlier. Boundaries, when do we set boundaries? Because now everybody is using social media platforms. Our messages come in very late, and there's a pressure that, oh, we have to comment about this. Oh no, I better respond to this. So the boundaries is something, I think it's a challenge that many of us, I think even myself, initially I had this issue like, when do I stop, or at what time do I actually stop replying to my clients? And the calls kept coming in even during weekends. So I think setting boundaries with our clients at the start is actually very important. And I think when we set boundaries and explain to them, they would also start to actually reflect, and maybe it'll be helpful for them. Okay, so at E2I, we've actually always had the options for online coaching for our clients, even before the pandemic situation. So we actually sometime last year, we moved away from desk phones, and now our phones are all connected either via our computers, our laptops, or our mobile phones. So I think the ease to use ICT, I wouldn't say it was very smooth, yeah, but I think it was more easier to transit And we've actually had a good social media presence on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. I'm not too sure how many of you have actually visited our Instagram page, but we actually have our own IG mascot. Her name is Ellie. But in the interest of time today, I think I would like to invite all of you to follow E2I's Instagram page to learn more about Ellie. So apart from actually tapping on just popular social media platforms, we've actually also have our very own E2I blog, which actually features success stories and key career industry insights and advice for our job seekers and businesses. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about our ULEAP app, which is actually a bite-sized e-learning platform. And the most recent introduction would be our NTUC's Job Security Council's Telegram channel. So there's actually job alerts for our clients, and it's an additional avenue for them to tap on. And career fairs, every month, we've always had physical career fairs across various industries. And we did also have e-career fairs even before this situation. But I think now when we moved into virtual career fairs, we also actually felt there was a need. So there were some speed interviews for specific positions in specific industries. So this is all about how we've been using ICT for our clients. But apart from this, right, we've actually also tried to use ICT to connect fellow coaches in the organization. So we have our monthly huddle sessions and our quarterly community of practice. So we've actually gone virtual on this session so that our coaches still continue to have an opportunity to share best practices, discuss, and also, refresher of what's happening, current SOPs and changes. So I think I would say that actually we've been actually very positively embracing the opportunities to use ICT in our daily work. Thank you.
Hi, this is Raymond. I just want to inform all the panelists to please show your face so that the attendees can have a great view of you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Please continue, Jeremiah. Sorry, Jeremiah, please unmute yourself.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Christine, do you have any view? I think I've shared my point.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. Jeremiah and Yogesh. Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm Christine from NTU. This is such an interesting and hot topic. I mean, many years ago, social media, this word is almost unheard of. And the key ways in which we communicate our clients is mainly through email, if not phone calls. But now social media is really used so widely to share information and to reach out to our clients. So I'm from the NTU Career Attachment Office, and on a yearly basis, we serve over 30,000 undergrads. So this is the group of clients that are super IT savvy. They know so much about the different IT tools. They learn new things so quickly within themselves and also from different sources all over. So I think in snapshots of Prof's sharing, he did share about how there's a lot of distraction, a lot of content in social media. So our challenge from the career office is really, as an undergrad, they have many things going on in their life. They have lectures, tutorials, activities, CCAs, and internships. So how do we, as career practitioners, actually grab their attention? And one of the key stakeholders that we work with will be the employers. So the employers on an ongoing journey are also unlearning and relearning how to understand the behavior of our undergrads, and that is important in helping to cater the different services to meet the needs of our students. So students, they are so busy, they read our emails only late at night, say maybe 2, 3 a.m., you start to see them replying to our emails. So that's a very interesting behavior. And even for talks and events, usually it starts from 4, it goes beyond 8, 9 p.m. That's where they become very, very active. So social media in NTU, we tap actively on Instagram, LinkedIn, and as career practitioners, we also link in with our clients to help them understand the different services that we offer. Okay, over to you, Jeremiah.
Thank you, Christine. so I think generally most of us, most of our organizations and career services are already online. So for example, I'm happy to hear that, from the various organizations. So let me just share a quick point on where I'm coming from, Workforce Singapore. The use of LinkedIn, Facebook, and various other channels is something that WSG actually is on. I would like to direct our conversation towards how career practitioners, as a medium of ICT, and how do we use ICT to engage and support our career services from our career coaching, from the use of virtual coaching, for example, in WSG, because of the COVID-19 situation, we are now 100% virtual coaching. Of course, we still available some of our face-to-face services on needs basis. And so let me just go ahead and share. I think one of the few questions raised in the Q&A question is the quality and the efficacy of career assessment data, statistics to inform our coaching, career counseling intervention. I think personally, my view is that as with all ethical requirements as career practitioner, the use of career assessment stands regardless whether if it's an online or offline. Using career assessment and data from a prescriptive or descriptive point of view, I think that is important. So much so that, as Christine, you accurately mentioned, there's so much distraction. And as career practitioners, my clients come to me and say, hey, this post by this person garner 1,000 likes on LinkedIn. So does that mean that it's credible? Is that something that I consider as a labor market information? So I think, as Professor Sampson accurately mentioned in the middle of his sharing, is that the level of subjectivity of career information on social media, the number of likes, the number of access does not constitute something that our client should immediately and readily use as something that they use for career decision. Now, that being said, the participation on social media itself is also something that we have to, as career practitioner, we have to be mindful of what our job seekers or our clients pour into the network. And as ethical requirement stipulates, how we monitor, how we support our client to speak and to project their self-concept on LinkedIn. That is another concern that I thought that I usually have in my practice. What do you all think?
I think, thanks, Jeremiah. Just to add on to your comment, in NTU Career Attachment Office, we definitely encourage our clients, our undergrads, just before they step out to the employment market, the need and the importance to have a LinkedIn account. So that is also part and parcel of social media. Our students per se, they are still new to the employment market and they may not know what are some things that they need to include in their LinkedIn account. And that's where, as career practitioners, what we include in our LinkedIn is also important as a role model for them. And based on their interactions and their so-called the networking with employers over LinkedIn, that also gives them a benchmark in terms of how to strengthen their LinkedIn account so as to increase their visibility, eventually to help them nail that job and for them to have their very grand step into the job market. Yeah, so that is certainly very important.
Hi, okay, to add on to what Christine mentioned, right, I think it's also important for the job seekers to understand how recruiters actually use LinkedIn to actually pick out candidates. So I think earlier somebody commented that LinkedIn is not only for job postings, but it's also an opportunity for our clients to actually use it to network. So many times, when you ask clients, how many contacts do you have? How many connections do you have on LinkedIn? They normally will tell about their, friends or their immediate colleagues, those kind of connections. So they don't realize that you have to connect beyond that. You have to network, to create more opportunities. So at E2I, we also have courses, right, on building a digital profile via LinkedIn. So we actually do guide them along this too.
On the point of guiding them, I think Yogesh, you brought up a very good point. And coincidentally, there was a question raised in a Q&A. So if you don't mind, let me just raise it up. I think there is a question by an anonymous attendee. The question is centered around, the use of social media to facilitate career services in various contexts, university career services, corporate communication, and the use of question and answer. I think the question is generally directing towards similar to what Yogi just mentioned. So I guess if I may just drill down to the key point of the question, what advice would we offer for a university intending to gradually feature parts of career services via social media? Yeah, I think that is something that I think this is something for all of us to comment on. And concurrently, there's also another question by Dr. Ramesh Tarani. The use of social media via group career counseling. So that is so we have first on the social media corporate marketing to the community, and of course on a group counseling. So what are our thoughts on that?
Okay, with regards to Dr. Ramesh's question, right, about group career counseling and what might be some of the key challenges for career practitioners in terms of our skill sets and capabilities in this regard. So I think all along, traditionally, we have been very used to having face-to-face, one-on-one interactions physically. And now disruption has taken place and we have all moved on to virtual coaching. And I think skill sets per se, right, definitely it will be a little bit more different from what we do now, because when we are actually doing group coaching, we first need to actually understand that we need to actually bring the group together, set a common grounding amongst all the attendees in the group, and icebreakers need to be put in place to ensure that all the participants in the group are actually able to contribute accordingly. And it's also another thing I think that we have to practice is to be a little bit more sensitive, because different attendees might come in with different agendas, even though, yes, they're all there for maybe a common goal. End of the day, they're going to, want to look for a job or move on and to do a career switch. The goal might be common, but we need to be very cautious of the questions and how we actually facilitate the whole group career counseling. Actually attended a recent masterclass on group career counseling where I actually realized that there's so many various skill sets. I mean, yes, there's probing, there's attending and all that, but I think handling a group, because of the different dynamics of the individuals, right, it's a slightly little bit more challenging.
If I could respond to a couple of the questions, a really important question is how to balance your time with social media. And one of the things that social media is particularly effective at is in marketing, in drawing people into your services with an understanding of what they might achieve if they came to receive help from your service. So you can't spend all of your time marketing, and you can't spend all of the time delivering services. So there has to be some appropriate balance in terms of social media between being proactive and reactive. And so the proactive part is how you manage your social media presence across tools to show that you're there and here's the kind of difference you can make in your clients' lives, with examples, with testimonials, with little case descriptions, not violating any confidentiality, but still showing how these interventions can be helpful. That's a proactive. A reactive part is then actually providing those services to individuals that request them. So it's a balancing act all along about, do I really spend my time creating new opportunities to use social media, or how much of a backlog of clients do I have, and what do I need to do to meet those client needs. The question about the individual versus group, I think, is a very good one. And I think we have so many people needing services that trying to offer as much as we can via group interaction is really best for two reasons. One is it makes best use of staff capability in terms of the number of people that can be served with the number of staff that are available. But also there is an extra power of groups that the person asking the question might be alluding to, and that is the shared experience of the groups. For example, they're technology students, they're up, it's late at night, and that's the best time to access them, and they can share common concerns. So I think having as much as possible our services delivered on a group basis with individual for people that have more unique needs might be a really an important strategy.
Great. So let's move on to the other questions. I think Professor Sampson, I think there was a question directed at you. So the question is by Sean Moy, I think he's a colleague of mine. His question, I think, to you is, building rapport, the working and therapeutic alliance of career practitioners across the ICT channel. So I think the question is, what are the various modes and the limitation and of administering career tools online?
Well, the part of it depends on whether you're in a synchronous or asynchronous communication mode. So if you're doing chat or email, then there are unique counselor skills in being able to communicate emotion in text when you don't have those visual cues. Which is why I mentioned that training was so crucial in all of this. So being able to learn to communicate emotion through text is crucial. In terms of the therapeutic alliance and synchronous communication, there are some advantages to having video because it's easier to see the person. It's somewhat easier, I think, to establish a relationship. But I want to let people do that without sharing their face if that helps them. And this is to help that reluctant client who's a little afraid of being exposed, so where they can start in a situation where their identity may not be known, and once they develop a sense of trust, once the therapeutic alliance then is achieved, then they can interact, show themselves, and be more open about who they are. I'm very excited about the potential of social media and ICT to serve people who really would have never gotten served before.
I just want to write on Professor Sampson's point. The notion of confidentiality and disclosure, I think that's something that on the ICT or for the matter social media, I think for us career practitioners, I'm sure Christine and Yogis, you will agree with this, is that we as career practitioners, we pride on ourselves on the confidentiality and disclosure consent from our clients, and sometimes whether or not we it is a consideration whether we want our clients to come forward to show themselves. I think, as Professor Sampson shared, from things like identifying myself, showing my face on the platform, or even for the matter on social media, that I am, who am I, who are my career coach or my career counselor. I think that is something that even in policy, in service design, I think there's something we have to pay attention, given the continuous ambiguity, the volatility in the ICT sector. I can imagine the various medium, be it on such as this platform Zoom, or in Skype, or in a dedicated group counseling session, as Dr. Ramesh Teraney mentioned. What are your thoughts, guys?
Okay, Jeremiah, I'll just add on to your point. I think from a university perspective, we do run group sessions and we do run webinars very actively, especially during this period of COVID. I think as youngsters, most of them they are quite quite participative in that sense. But we also have students that prefer to still communicate with our career practitioners over email, preferring to be anonymous, and sometimes they also still prefer to have their phone chat rather than having a proper, say, half an hour career consultation session with our practitioners. So I think we need to sort of have different folks, different strokes, different approaches to meet different clients' needs. Even as youngsters, some of them could be quite shy, some of them are more outgoing. So we need to be able to cater to their different needs. Yeah.
Okay, so if I can add on to what Christine mentioned, right? For coaching now that we have gone virtual, phone or video coaching, when we give the clients actually an option to decide between phone or video, we're also giving them the job seekers themselves to decide on the level of privacy that they prefer. And now with a lot of phone interviews being conducted, video interviews being conducted, there is a profile of clients who are not very comfortable with using technology because for them they are so used to the traditional. I go down for an interview, I see somebody, I answer them, and then they can look at me. So we had to actually find ways to bridge this, so to actually help our clients to be more familiarized with how to have handle phone interviews. This is for us, a specific profile of clients lah.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Yogis. And where I came from in WSG, well, most of the people that come forward to serve us because they're adults, and most of them are already working, and or they have lost their job and they're coming to us, in their unemployment. So most of them may not be savvy with the use of ICT or social media. And to the point of Professor Sampson, I agree with that. Is that the use of text messages it is already a challenge psychologically and emotionally to reflect the feelings and the contents in session, let alone translating them accurately, emphatically over text. So that is something that is even I myself as a career practitioner, I pay mindful focus on that. And Yogis, that's a very good point that we need to be. I think as career practitioners, not only do we need to look out for some form of instructional design, being patient with our clients, guiding them into the use of social media. I think where Christine comes from, where our young folks are, I think social media and the use of internet is a natural extension of their lifestyles as opposed to where we come from. So we really need to be patient, we take a lot of effort to guide our users and of course to share with them the limitation, the cautionary story tales of what it means to be on social media. And so I want to direct our attention to answer the questions next, if you guys don't mind. So there is a question here that I think raised by Kim Ying. I think it's Professor Chan Kim Ying from NTU. So I think his question was, I think this is directed to Professor Sampson, is that could Professor Sampson tell us more about the CIP, the Cognitive Information Processing Theory for career guidance?
It's a theory that looks at how people, how their thoughts and their emotions and their behavior interact to help them make career choices, and how to design services that will help identify people that need more help than others. We have a differentiated service delivery model that tries to allocate staff resources to the people who need it the most. And we're going to have a webinar. The second webinar actually in this series is going to be devoted to that. And so that's, I would suggest that we look to that webinar to try to help make a better answer, more complete answer to that question.
All right. So let's move on to the next question, shall we? Now, the next question is here by Joyce Tan. So with the growing popularity of leveraging upon social media for career development initiative, what are our suggestions and advice relating to the etiquette and the code of ethics by individual relating with his or her career branding, engagement, or I think what she meant is also the interaction with career coaches and potential employers. So I think this is a question for all of us, So I guess what Joyce is looking for is, is there some boundaries? Is there some no-go zone? Or, what does the code of ethics has to say about all these things? I think this is something for all of us to address. Who would like to begin first?
I mean, there's lots of changes to the major codes of ethics across the International Association for Educational and Vocational Guidance has some new code that is now out. There are several ones in the United States. I think having one thing that could be very helpful would be to combine all the different codes of ethics onto a website that would practitioners in Singapore could look at some of the websites that are available in other associations and so forth. So I think that's a place to start, is look at what other people are writing in these codes and then seeing what is applicable in Singapore.
Christine Yogis, any thoughts on the question?
I would like to add about the boundaries part. I think because there's a lot of leveraging on social media now, right? I normally tell my clients, when they are actually reaching out to potential employers and all that, to always remember that whatever they are actually, sometimes using Facebook to message potential employers and all, is actually giving a opportunity for the employer to actually judge this individual, because the moment you text something out of context or you message something that is not very positive, employers might pick up all these cues. So always tell them to always ensure that they are within the boundaries, because sometimes when we use social media, we tend to we just tend to let because it's a keyboard, right? So some people tend to become keyboard warriors during when they're using these channels. So I always tell them to ensure that they always remember that these are potential employers that they are actually engaging. So everything that they say could be taken, whatever they say has to be in a positive manner. So I think the boundaries part, and I always tell them, please do not go and message or even after office hours, because then again, it's not going to reflect very positively. Not too sure about how many of you, since we've started going virtual, have been getting calls, like I said earlier, beyond office hours. So I think these are the kinds of things that we need to set boundaries with our clients when we actually do the contractual at the start itself.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Yogis. Christine, what are your thoughts?
Okay, I will just add on to Yogish's point. I think from the universities, undergrads, they may have only that amount of interface with employers. So what we do from the career office is really to sort of QC the sort of employers that participate in our virtual fairs or virtual workshops, to at least make sure that those employers that come in are credible and they have credible backgrounds. And from there, that's where students may quite actively reach out to the employers to explore further conversations. So we do that level of QC. And I think at the end of the day, humans being human, while we can have certain T&Cs to set certain boundaries, very much when the employers and our clients go into a certain level of interactions, and we as career practitioners are not involved, sometimes it's still very much that sixth sense, and certain questions that if the other party were to ask and it caused certain level of discomfort, maybe for women especially, we have that sixth sense. Our clients need to come in and at least put a stop to that, to avoid it going any further lah. But of course, as undergrads, they may not be very familiar in that sense yet. And that's where we as career practitioners need to sort of gentle reminder to them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know our time is really short, but I just want to add a couple of comments on what we've been discussing in these amongst the panelists and some of the questions and answers. I want to emphasize a couple of points really quickly. The question of how much contact on social media is enough was a really good one. Trying to balance how active should you be? When should you be proactive? When should you be reactive? I think that's really important. The issue of boundaries that we've been talking about and helping our clients establish realistic and appropriate boundaries is really important to keep this technology from being abused. I really would strongly suggest that people who are using ICT and especially social media to look at other career services use of ICT and social media so they can compare what they're doing with what others are doing and what are the best practices that are beginning to emerge on that. Helping clients know what social media is going to be valuable to them and what social media is less likely to be valuable to them, I think is really an important issue. The validity of assessment and information, the questions, comments in those areas were absolutely very, very crucial, I think. But I want to end with one of the last questions that we have here about the role of general education in preparing students to use the kind of career information and tools that are available. I really believe that one of our most important roles is to teach our clients, whether they're young or old, first job, last job, to teach them how to make good use of ICT, how to understand what is likely biased information and what is not, how to be a good consumer. I think we have a real professional responsibility to ensure that people are making good use of these resources. And that's going to take, we're going to need to have some time that we spend on teaching people how to be good consumers of social media and ICT.
So thanks, Prof. We still have a bit more time. So we have about 11 more minutes. So that's a good news. Maybe we can take a few more questions. So there was another question, I think raised by Sopping, I think from Workforce Singapore. I think it's inevitably answered by Professor Sampson just now. The question was, how do we ensure the delivery of career services or equal parity between face-to-face and the ICT? I guess the answer is, it really depends on the service design. More importantly, from a practitioner point of view, my view is that please, the rest of you, please share. My view is, I think it's important to know and to connect with the client that we serve and what they're comfortable with. So if they prefer face-to-face, putting aside COVID-19, then so it shall be. And of course, if it's a multi-pronged approach, asynchronous, synchronous, and face-to-face, requested by my client, I'll gladly accede to their request. What do y'all think?
I think like what I mentioned earlier, Jeremiah, I think the client should be able to decide whether they want to use face-to-face or even video or phone, because the client should be allowed to actually decide what level of privacy that they would actually prefer. So they're actually comfortable during the session, and there won't be any hesitance, and so that we can actually have an effective coaching session. I think that's quite critical.
Christine, any thoughts on that?
From my perspective, the fact that we're dealing with undergrads and IT is so important for them. While certain students may be comfortable with certain mode of interface, from the career office, we do need to prep them that more and more employers are using ICT to engage them. So for instance, a video interview is not something that everyone is very comfortable with, but it is something that will stay. And for them to secure their first job, they will very oftentimes have to go through a video interview. And that is something that along the way, they unfortunately have to equip themselves to be very comfortable in front of the screen and how to answer questions confidently. No choice to me. It's I 4.0, I 5.0 coming. They really have to conquer it rather than to be very afraid and resist lah. And eventually it could be a stumbling block for them.
Thank you, Christine. Now, moving on to the next question, a question raised. I think this is a very interesting one. I think I would like Professor Sampson to address this question. The question by Benjamin Lim. The question is on, he would like to hear your opinions and hopefully the rest of us on the notion on increasing popularity with games and gamification on ICT career exploration. So is it appropriate to design games in order to drive engagement or career services in developing their job search, and I think, or for the matter, the larger narrative of career development? Professor Sampson, what do you think?
Oh, I think gaming can be very powerful, especially since we have such a large portion of our population who have been active in gaming as they've grown up. So the fact that we can use simulation strategies to help teach people some of these skills, both in using social media and in making career choices, that creating these games, I think, can be very, very powerful ways of teaching. So I see it as a teaching methodology to create games that help people learn about career decision-making and about good use of ICT. The gamification aspect of it, where we're now providing more competition and badges and achievements, where people are getting feedback from an application as to how much they've done, how much they've achieved. That, I think, actually for both of those, for games and gamification, we need some experimentation. We need to really try to, I think it's worth the time and the money to be able to experiment with that and really see what kind of contribution, what sort of difference it makes. But my hunch is that this would be a very valuable, especially the gaming part and the simulations and decision-making, I think can be particularly useful. The gamification may run into some limits as users become overwhelmed with the number of badges they have or that they achieve. And so we need to be somewhat careful in our use of those. But I think it's certainly worth trying. Yeah.
I have the same set. I tend to agree with Professor Sampson. If I don't mind, if I just share a quick story. A client I was serving a few months ago, and he was looking to switch his major before and entering the finding his first job. So one of the things that I use in session with him is on gamification. We started our narrative session towards understanding that he enjoyed playing this game. I think some of us may know it's called StarCraft 2. So it is a real-time strategy game. And for example, it is through this game that in our session that we discovered that his hand-eye coordination, his quick thinking, his ability, it is a trait and factor approach and a strengths-based approach to career counseling, is that he realized that he's very good in this. And he eventually found his first job last year in a role that allows him to move content, video editing, graphic manipulation very quickly. So this is something that we discovered for him. So I think that is gamification, games exploration. I believe is not just good for resume writing. It is also good for career education. It is good for understanding the trait and factor from a trait and factor model point of view, from a strengths-based point of view, to understanding what our clients are already exhibiting, the strengths and the abilities that supports the career decision making. What is the rest thing?
I think the whole idea is actually to frame learning in a way that actually engages the learner more. So reference is made to the ULEAP app I shared earlier. So with this bite-sized online learning platform, like we actually used quizzes, online quizzes, to actually make the learning experience more engaging for the individual. So sometimes, you know, when the simulation goes through and they're actually more engaged, right, they're able to grasp better. And however, I would like to add that this might not work with certain profiles of our clients who are still reluctant to use technology. But in general, I think gamification, I think, would be a useful way.
I just want to add on to Yogesh's and Jeremiah's comment. I think this is a very good suggestion. Many of our employers, they actually use gamification as a tool to assess and to shortlist candidates. You know, while it's serious in terms of shortlisting the candidates, I think from an undergrad's perspective, it is fun and engaging, and definitely is a new idea. We will take back and explore how we can, you know, deepen this approach and idea further. Yeah, very good suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, we have a bit more time for the last question. So I think I will go with the question raised here by I think it's a guest name. So question I think is to Professor Sampson. I think you're in a better position to answer this. Is that, are there any countries at the moment already using gaming or gamification as part of career decision making?
I'm not aware of any country that has done any policy work where they've stressed that as part of, like, for example, a strategy for unemployed youth to try to reach out to them. So I don't know of any particular guidance policy that has emphasized that. It's really, most of what I've seen has been individual career services, individual practitioners who have been experimenting with things. There's been some use of Second Life, for example, in delivery of career interventions. My colleague Deborah Osborne has done some work in that area. So we haven't yet created it as a kind of a uniform guidance policy. We haven't talked much about a guidance policy tonight, but that is really important about what is the government's policy for unemployed adults, for career interventions, for young people in schools, and looking across all of those policy statements and seeing where games and simulations and gamification could make a difference. So I think that's a really important policy question.
Yeah, I think personally, I'm not sure of if gamification is part of any policy yet in Singapore. I mean, I think the rest of the panel can correct me. I think at least not yet, but I think that will be an interesting area for us to delve into, given that a majority of our population, you know, the engagement on an attention level, I think that is something worth exploring. We still have a bit more time, maybe just 2 more minutes left. Maybe just take one more question. All right. So the next question that let's say if I could pick out is okay. This is another question from Chan Kim Ying. Is that to what extent do career guidance work closely with career communities to provide career support to newcomers of the career and professional field? So I think what Kim Yin is meant to say is, you know, how can we use ICT further to engage people for group counseling further, or to engage fresh school leavers moving to their first job?
I think this is what I was mentioning about marketing, and that we put some of our energy, if we think of it as almost like a pie chart, what proportion of the practitioner's time is going to be spent in specific uses of ICT. I think making sure that we have a portion that's dedicated to marketing, that's not directly delivering services, but trying to find clients where they're likely to interact on the kind of sites where they're visible, and making sure they're aware of the kind of services that we offer and the kind of potential benefits those services might provide to them.
Yeah. Any last thoughts from Christine and Yogis?
Social media is definitely here to stay. The pros and cons, and Professor Simpson has given us a very good overview. And I think we just have to find ways to manage it well. It is a good tool, but it is also a knife in a way, because things go out so quickly, and there are fake news and all, so we will need to manage it carefully. So if we use it properly, it will actually enable to do a very good outreach and get our messaging across. Yeah, that's my final words. Thank you, Jeremiah.
Thank you, Christine and Rez. So I think in closing, I think my thoughts is that the use of the social media, as much as we want to launch our clients into the sphere, we have to launch it cautiously, carefully, respecting the confidentiality and the rights of how our clients would turn out on social media. Another thought that I thought locally that we could do more is how do we, I think as Professor Sampson and a few others have done, is how do we do co-careering? How do we co-construct the contents of our clients? I mean, this is on top of just using keywords, using industrial terms on their social media or ICT. I mean, besides that, how do we help our individual we serve to construct a good brand? I think there was a lot of questions raised that we couldn't answer in time. And it's a brand that they can resonate confidently, emotionally. I think that is something that we something worth exploring as well, which I think Professor Sampson has covered a few. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to hand the timer back to Raymond. Raymond?
Maya, Yogesh, and Christine, for sharing with us your insight and address some of the questions that we have. We have now come to the end of the webinar session on successful use of ICT and social media in career advisory services. The recording of this webinar will be made available to all on IAL website, and the slides will also be sent to all in the next few days. To all our participants, our attendees, we hope you had a good takeaway from this webinar. And please don't go yet. We encourage you to join us for the next webinar that will be on the 26th of June, which is a Friday, 2 weeks from now. The title of the next webinar will be 8 Habits of a Successful Career Counselor. I repeat, 8 Habits of a Successful Career Counselor. All right. We would appreciate if you could share with us your thoughts and feedback by just taking 2 minutes of your time to do this survey. I'm sharing it with you right now, the link and the QR code that you can just use your camera and point and then just do a survey. And there is a short description of the link that you can type in to do your survey. Now, of course, once you exit from this webinar, your browser may also launch and go straight for this survey. So thank you very much, attendees. Please, the survey will really help us, okay? Once again, my name is Raymond, and together with Ruby and Fiza, we'd like to thank Professor Sampson, Jeremiah, Yogesh, and Christine for their support Meanwhile, stay safe. Yeah. And healthy. See you soon, everybody.
Hello. Hi. Hi, everyone. Hey, thanks very much. Everyone,
Please-
good job. Give yourself a
Please
clap.
wait for the attendees to leave first. Thank
Very
you.
good job. Excellent. Let me showcase.
Ruby, please wait for the attendees to leave first. The attendees hasn't left yet.
Okay.